Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /Entitled People, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got entitled Karens threatening employees, fake friends of the owner, HOA control freaks, and one OP tells a story about a nightmare customer who pushes his luck way too far. And honestly, some of these people are so unbelievably confident while being so wrong, it's painful, guys. So grab your snacks, get comfy, and you know how it is. This voice should only be on the Dark Fluff YouTube channel. Let's dive in. So I've worked in retail for 6 years, and I've seen and heard so many things. Currently, I'm working at a big box store that has an electronics center. Normally, we aren't allowed to touch anyone's devices, but every now and then, we will help customers and we'll show them how certain things work on their phone. That's basically the most we can do since we just sell the things. We're not required to do anything beyond that. The other day, I had a customer come to the counter with his brother. They were in their 40s or so, and immediately they were suspicious. The one customer asked me if I could look at his phone. He said he accidentally fell asleep on it, and apparently he pressed a bunch of random buttons, so now it's on emergency mode. Now, I was super confused, and I'm usually pretty tech savvy, so out of curiosity, I had to look at it. The conversation went like this. The guy says to me, "Listen, you have to unlock this somehow, like right now. I can't afford to buy another phone until I get paid." He then hands me his phone. I press the side button, and when the screen comes on, it literally says in bold letters, "Bring back my phone, a-hole." And right under it, it said, "Call owner," with the call button lit up green. So I called it, and it went to voicemail. The phone number was from Mississippi. I tell the guy, "I'm sorry, sir, there's not much I can do. It's locked down by the owner." The guy then says very aggressively, "I am the owner, idiot. I told you I fell asleep on it, and it locked itself." I then say, "If that's the case, can you put in your password?" The guy's basically yelling at this point, and he says, "I didn't create a password. It should not have a password." I don't know what happened, but when I woke up and looked at it, there was a password. Now unlock it. I just tell him, "Well, sir, it seems the owner locked this phone down. And since you don't have the password, you won't be able to unlock it. If you are the owner, you can go to your service provider and they can help you further. Technically, I'm just a sales rep. I'm actually not qualified to." And this is when the customer's brother chimes in and he screams at me and says, "He is the owner. I can call the number right now and this phone will ring." The guy then decides to call the number and nothing happened. At this point, I'm still confused to why they would think a big box store could unlock this phone. And they're both screaming at me right now. So I just say, "You know what, give me a second and I'll call my manager. He might be more able to help you out." So I radio the manager to come to the counter, and as soon as they heard that, they ran to the entrance and they left the store. I told management what happened, and we were just astonished that they brought in a stolen phone and tried to get me to unlock it. Most likely, they're gonna trash the phone. So yeah, the post ends right there, guys, but some people are so bold, it shocks me. Like, we all know thieves aren't the smartest people, but the fact that those guys thought they could walk into a random electronics store and get a stolen phone magically unlocked, like, I am baffled. Like, imagine stealing a phone and having the nerve to harass a sales rep to unlock it. Some people, I tell you. So first of all, this isn't my story, but it's my friend Debbie's. This also happened about 15 years ago, so the details might be a bit hazy. My friend Debbie worked at the front counter at a local bakery, whose specialty was what they called these football cakes. It was a basic chocolate cake with the logos of the two teams drawn in icing on it. They made these for local high school games, as well as some college and pro games. Debbie worked the front counter, while the owner and his kids worked in the back baking, decorating, etc. The only caveat was you had to order these cakes at least a day in advance, though longer was better. The fridge in the back would get full, so they would put them up in the display case up front, with a huge sign that read, "Reserved, not for sale." One day, this lady comes in, and she asked for a cake for the Iowa Hawkeyes versus Minnesota Golden Gophers game later that day. I think there were only 2 hours until kickoff. Debbie asked what her name was that she had reserved it under. The lady said no name, but she saw them in the display case and she asked if she could have one of those instead. Debbie then explains that those were all reserved, and unless she had reserved one already, she couldn't have one. That's when the lady blows up and she says she needs one right now and that she knew the owner. She threatened that unless Debbie sold her one, she would get her in really big trouble, maybe even fired. The funny thing is, the owner heard all of this and he came up front to ask what's going on. The lady immediately said that Debbie was being unhelpful and refusing to sell her a cake. The owner then asked if she had one reserved, and when she said no, he replies with, "I'm sorry, but we need at least 1 day reservation to make it." The lady doesn't like that answer either, and she starts yelling how she knew the owner and she would have all their jobs. This is when the owner gives Debbie a subtle wink, as if to say, "I got this, just play along." He then told the lady, "Oh, you know the old codger who owns this place? Well, when you see him, tell him I'm sleeping with his wife, and tell him that she screams my name out all night long." Debbie said it took every ounce of self-control to not burst out laughing right there. The Karen then replies, "I'm sure he doesn't want to hear that, and if you sell me the cake I want, I won't tell him." The owner just answers, "Tell him all you want, but you're not getting that particular cake. If you want another one, I'm sure we can find something else for you." But the lady refused, and she says, "I want a football cake. If I don't get one, I will tell the owner about you two, and I'll have you both fired." At that point, the owner finally gave up on the ruse, and he tells Karen, "Listen, lady, I am the owner. I've never seen you before, and with luck, I'll never see you again. Please leave my establishment." At this, Debbie completely lost it, and she burst out laughing. When the lady turned to look at her, Debbie nodded vigorously, as if to say, "Yeah, he really is the owner." The woman turned bright red and she bolted out the door and she never came back. And the sad thing is I really miss that bakery. When the owner retired, he gave the bakery to his kids, 2 sons and a daughter, super entitled children, and the quality went downhill fast. They replaced his ingredients with the cheapest substitutes they could find to basically make as much money as they could. When he died a few years later, people said that he died after seeing how badly his kids ruined the bakery. So we got a new fridge yesterday. It's one of those humongous double-door monstrosities, and of course, it came with a humongous amount of styrofoam and cardboard that I need to get rid of. The quickest way for me to get rid of it is shoving it into my car and driving it to the waste depot. So I start cutting things apart and bringing them to my car, which is parked in my driveway. Unfortunately, it's so much trash that I have to go 5 times to my car. I go on the first trip, open my car's trunk, and load it up. For convenience sake, I leave my trunk open. And yes, it's right next to the sidewalk, but I live in a pretty safe area, and I'm only loading trash. So if anyone wants to help themselves to some styrofoam, sure, why not? I go back inside, and I bring the next 2 loads out and into my car. On my 3rd trip, some dude is standing next to my car. I don't know him, and he probably doesn't know me, but he's standing in my driveway, right next to my car. I approach my car with both of my hands full of styrofoam. He then yells, "Excuse me." The guy then asked if this is my car, which I tell him it is. Well, he immediately launches into a tirade how I must be so stupid leaving my trunk open. and he asked if I wanted to invite criminals into the neighborhood and how irresponsible I am. I just tell him, I don't care about your opinion, get off my property. I don't wait for him to reply, but I storm back inside to get the last bits of plastic wrap. When I get back to my car, thankfully the guy's gone, and so is a big piece of styrofoam from my trunk. The piece is the base plate that the fridge stands on, basically the largest and most unwieldy piece of them all. I just thought to myself, did that guy take it? I look around for a while, thinking he'd have thrown it somewhere, but the piece was gone. We shrug, get into the car, and drive to the depot. On our way back, my wife and I go for some lunch and shop for some groceries. All in all, we were gone for almost 2 hours. The moment we come home and we step out of my car, the guy storms across the street with the missing styrofoam piece in hand, and the guy's visibly angry at me. He immediately starts screaming in my face, saying he's now taught me a lesson about keeping my car locked, that I should be lucky it was only him and not some actual criminal on my street, and that I'm getting my property back. Once again, I tell him to leave my property and I'll call the police if I ever see him on here again. He says he's happy to never talk to me again once I take back what's mine. I reply that I won't take back the piece because I'd have to throw it away, and I suggest he can take it and stick it up his rear end. The guy threatens to call the police on me for not taking the styrofoam back. I just put my hands on my hips and I tell him I'll gladly tell the cops how I just had some stuff stolen from my car and that the perpetrator was right there. He huffs and puffs and then throws the styrofoam to my feet and stomps off like a toddler. He screams at me that he'd better see me throw it away. I just can't with some people. Honestly, the fact that the guy stole garbage from OP to teach them a lesson somehow makes this whole thing even more ridiculous, right? Like OP said, you just can't with some people. And if I were in OP's shoes, it would be so hard not to walk that piece right back to his house. Like, you want to steal my garbage, it's yours now. And the top comment of this post says, inviting criminals. Does he think there are robbers wearing white and black striped jumpsuits and eye masks just wandering the forest that can smell an open car trunk 2 miles away? Absolutely ridiculous. And while we're on the topic of people thinking they can control their neighborhoods, listen to this next post. So my parents had this rental property that they passed on to me when they died. The house has been here since before the neighborhood next to it was built, so it's not part of an HOA. It's been established several times with the previous renters and my parents. While we were renovating to prepare to move in, we installed gates at 3 entrances to the property because we didn't want people to come onto the property. A month after we finished, we had a visit from this old man who opened our back gate since the front one was locked, just to give us the welcome to the HOA packet. I told him that we're not part of the neighborhood, so the HOA doesn't apply to our property. He just huffed and he says I am, since his property is right next door. I nicely repeated myself and I asked him not to come onto my property again without permission. He just scoffed, saying that he doesn't see any trespassing signs, so he can do what he wanted when he wanted. Eventually, the guy left. The next day, we install locks on the gates and no trespassing signs. The next thing we know, we're getting HOA violation letters in our mailbox. The letters also listed things that were happening in our backyard, the things that someone could only see if they were looking over the fence. After the 5th notice, they threatened eviction. So I called the number listed and I explained to a lady the situation. And she said the HOA president said we're part of the HOA, and he was the one reporting. In the end, she said all we had to do was prove we weren't, and they would waive the fines and leave us alone. So I gathered paperwork and I went to the next meeting where I gave them the paperwork which proved I was right. Well, the old man loses his mind and he said it doesn't matter. We still need to follow his rules and change the things he wanted. Apparently, the reason he was so upset is that we installed gates and fixed the fence that prevented him from going where he wanted when he went on his walks. The gates and fence also prevents his family from taking a shortcut to the pool. And if that wasn't bad enough, he said that my backyard was filled with things he didn't want to see from his second-story balcony, and that the trees we planted and the new fence prevented him from seeing the windows on our property. The guy actually got so angry that he needed to be brought to a different room. I left soon after, but I haven't heard a single thing since. It's amazing how entitled some people are. Listen, I think we can agree, thank goodness OP's not a part of that HOA, because imagine having to deal with that power-tripping jerk on a regular basis. Like, imagine being so obsessed with controlling your neighbors that you try to enforce HOA rules on someone who's not even part of the HOA. And the funniest part is the entire meltdown started because the guy was angry he couldn't trespass through their property anymore, nor look into their windows. What in the world, some people? I have a funny one to share. I used to work for a well-known greeting card company in the UK. I had this one customer come in, and she spent about 30 minutes looking over the cards we had on display. After she picked the card she wanted, she came to the tills to pay. Once the cards were all put through, she refuses to pay the price, demanding a discount, to which I replied to her that unfortunately, I'm unable to give her a discount. She still refuses to pay that price, saying she's friends with the CEO of the company, that she always gets a discount in the store. Now, I want to note, I had been in the store for over 18 months, and I've never seen her before. To which I reply, if you were friends with the CEO, then they would have given you a discount card. She said she was never given one, so I reply again, I can't give you a discount. The woman gets very upset, and she starts shouting that she was gonna call the CEO, and he was gonna fire me for upsetting one of his best friends. When she finished the call, she made this big song and dance saying that I'll get a phone call in a second telling me to give her a discount. And here's the fun bit. Unknown to this woman was 5 of the other people in the store were from head office, so I knew I wasn't gonna get a phone call at all. As time went on, I said to the customer, so no phone call, are you gonna pay for these goods? Which again, she asked for a discount, which I said no to again. Now, I knew the CEO was in fact a woman, and she was in my store just watching the whole thing play out. Once the CEO had enough, she walks up to me and she interrupts this customer and told her that she was the CEO. And she told the customer that she was not gonna get a discount for the goods she wanted. And if she didn't want to pay that price, she could just leave. Well, this Karen didn't believe the CEO was the CEO, as she wasn't dressed in a suit, so she was very rude to her, calling her a lying bitch. At this point, the CEO was about to knock this woman out, but she didn't. Instead, she comes up with an even better idea. She asked the customer to leave the store, but she refused, which is where the CEO asked me to call security, so I did. They turned up 30 seconds later, and they removed the customer from the store. The CEO then signs a banning order, saying that this woman was banned from going into any store that belonged to this company and others that belonged to her trading group. Just to really put the nail in the coffin, security had to call police. The woman tried to have a fight with them, so she got arrested and she was banned from entering the center where her car was. So the moral of the story is don't lie to people. She paid a very heavy price for wanting a discount. Yeah, this is exactly why saying that you know the owner or you know the CEO is such a dangerous gamble, guys. Especially if you don't know them. Like, not only did Karen embarrass herself in front of the actual CEO, but in good old Karen fashion, she throws a tantrum that resulted in a ban and an arrest. Everybody knows a Grinch, a Scrooge, a Montgomery Burns. Someone who, for whatever reason, makes it their mission to ruin the happiness of others. In normal everyday life, we can ignore the Scrooges, or, if they're particularly horrible, just punch them in the face and be done with it. But when you have a Scrooge for a customer, you can unfortunately neither punch nor ignore them. Such is the case with my store's Mr. Green. Now, Mr. Green is on the winding downside of a midlife crisis. His anatomy has reasserted itself and is slowly but steadily pushing the hair plugs out of his head. The credit cards he was issued to finance his new childhood are coming up declined more and more, and his Mustang convertible has ancient bird crap stains on the leather from the numerous times he's parked it without putting the top back on. If it weren't for his a-hole self, Mr. Green would be a pitiable fellow. So that all said, Mr. Green comes to our clothing shop at least 3 times a week, always following the same routine. On Monday, he'll come in and he'll purchase a lot of clothing. On Tuesday, we'll get a call from Mr. Green informing us that he's dissatisfied with the clothing. On Wednesday, he'll come back to the store to return all the items he's dissatisfied with. On Thursday, we'll get another call in, which he insists that one of his many soon-to-be defunct credit cards was not credited back the proper amount. He gives us a day off on Friday, though we don't know why. On Saturday, he'll come back in to argue and haggle with our manager to try to get even more money than he's owed. Week in, week out, this is how it goes with Mr. Green. Unto itself, this would not be reason enough to hate the man. A customer may be very difficult, even demanding, but that alone doesn't make him an a-hole. Being an a-hole is what makes him an a-hole. The guy has, on numerous occasions, insulted our staff. The guy's even used the N-word on one of our cashiers when the total of his purchase exceeded his original estimate. He parks in handicap spaces, and I said spaces, plural. He'll drive his gross Mustang in and face the door laterally. Whenever he's confronted about it, he just shrugs and says, "The sooner I'm done here, the sooner the spaces will be free, so chop, chop." Not only that, but the guy's been asked to leave several times after harassing female customers and staff, each time vowing to sue if he was manhandled. The guy would always get away with all of it because the owner was his high school buddy. That is, until recently. Last week, our owner sold out his franchise to the corporate company from which he had purchased the license. We, the employees, had feared that this meant the store would simply close and we'd be out of jobs, but mercifully, they decided to keep our location open. They promoted one of our floor managers, Tony, to the position of general manager, and the hourly wage was raised by 25 cents. Suffice to say, we're all ready to give a salute to our corporate overlords, but the best was yet to come. The night before his first shift as general manager, a Friday, one of the guys asked Tony what he planned to do about Mr. Green. Tony, already the model of a corporate type, said, "Just do your jobs like you already do and don't worry about it." The next day, Saturday, Mr. Green shows up like he always does to eke more money than he was owed out of us. The guy parked across the 2 closest handicap spaces, just like always. He then marches into the store and asks to be shown the men's section, even though the guy knew where it was by heart. But before anyone could even approach, Tony was already there. Tony positioned himself between Mr. Green and the rest of the store. Tony also had an object in his hand, which I don't immediately recognize. I feared momentarily that this might have been a weapon. I also couldn't hear what Tony said to Mr. Green, but the voice with which he said it was low and menacing. My fears grew. I thought to myself, is Tony about to shoot Mr. Green? Mr. Green's eyes just grew wide as Tony spoke. At first, I attributed this to being threatened with bodily harm, but I watched the expression grow from one of surprise to indignation. He then screams at Tony saying, "What the F are you talking about? I want to see Joe, the former owner, right now." Cue even more rumbled conversation from Tony, who had begun to draw himself up to his full height of 6'3". It was now certain that Tony was about to destroy Mr. Green right there on the tiled floor. Not even 30 seconds later, Mr. Green roars, "F you. I've been coming here for years. You can't just throw me out. I haven't even done anything." At which point, Tony produces the item. He held it in front of his own face, and I finally recognized a Polaroid camera. It flashed as Tony holds it steadily, momentarily confusing Mr. Green, who then launches into a full-on conniption. Tony walks away from Mr. Green, and as he passed by me towards the offices in the back of the store, he growled, "Don't let him have anything, and make sure he doesn't steal anything." Not far behind him, jogging and all the while cursing, was Mr. Green, demanding that the picture that Tony had taken was his property, that he had no right, blah blah blah. When he got to me, I politely put myself between him and the entrance to the office, explaining, "I'm sorry, Mr. Green, employees only." He screams at me saying, "BS. Let me pass, idiot." He then tries to walk around me. I quickly backed up, putting myself directly in front of the doorway to the offices, and I say, "I'm really sorry, Mr. Green, but you can't go back there." He looked about ready to body check me at this point, so I just shrugged and I moved out of the way. Mr. Green gave me a filthy look as he moved and tried to open the door, which was locked. He then began to pound on the door, making legal threats, bodily threats, and metaphysical threats. He went on like this for about a solid minute before Tony opens the door and steps out. Mr. Green just steels himself as Tony returned, ready for a fight. But Tony just sidesteps him and he walks straight to me. He hands me a stack of papers, and each was a flyer, which bore the words, "This person is not welcome in the store," right above a photograph of Mr. Green mid-tirade. Tony then tells me, "Put these on all the entrances and behind every cashier station." Right about now, Mr. Green had leaned over to see what it was Tony handed me, and he saw and he starts throwing an even bigger fit. Tony just paid him no mind and brushed past him into his office. Meanwhile, Mr. Green continues howling and pounding on the door. He saw me turning to walk to the entrance, and he comes and grabs me saying, "If you put those up, I will sue you for defamation of character and discrimination. In fact, I'll sue all of you so hard, you won't even have homes anymore." I was unsure of what to do because I don't want to get sued, even though it's pretty unlikely. But I was relishing the idea of humiliating Mr. Green. I was saved from hesitation by an announcement over the store's PA system. It was Tony's voice, calmly announcing, "To the driver of the yellow Mustang convertible, your car's being towed." There was a moment of silence as both Mr. Green and I came to understand what that meant, and quicker than I've ever seen him move, Mr. Green runs down the aisle towards the entrance. I just followed, and I looked out the large glass doors at the entrance to our store, only to see Mr. Green hemming and hawing at the tow truck operator, who had begun to load his car onto the bed of the truck. When I turned around, there was Tony with a mile-wide grin on his face. We haven't seen Mr. Green at all this week, and I'm starting to think that we'll never see him again. Guys, I love this post so much, and what a satisfying post that was. A nasty Karen customer who thought he was untouchable finally gets what he deserved. Kudos to Tony for not putting up with him. That said, guys, like the owner who was letting him get away with all that stuff just because he was a friend, like I don't know about you guys, but if that were me and my friend was always in my store throwing tantrums, harassing my staff, harassing customers, and trying to get more money out of refunds, yeah, you are not a friend anymore, I'll tell you that. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r / malicious compliance episode. Guys, it's been a while, and it's all about nasty Karen bosses messing with customers and getting exactly what they deserve. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.